In the early days of flying, Southampton Water became the busiest runway in the country, as it was generally perceived that the flat surface would guarantee flying boats and seaplanes a smooth takeoff and an even smoother landing. Aircraft construction developed along Southampton Water, sharing traditional boat building skills as well as the new technologies of the fledgling powerboat industry. The air pageant held in 1927 showed how Hamble embraced the new age with three principal locations linked to the development of early aircraft, firstly on the estuary of the River Hamble at Hamble Point, and then later to the airfields both south and then north of Hamble Lane. In 1912, a waterplane was used, sponsored by the Daily Mail, assembled and housed in a shed at Hamble Point and used for passenger flights to and from Southsea Beach. In the same year, local boat builders Luke & Co. in partnership with Hamble River Engineering built the HL-1 seaplane at Hamble Point, which was exhibited at Olympia in 1914 but never completed. Later that year, the Admiralty requisitioned the premises, which they again passed on to Fairey Aviation. From 1915 until the late 1930s, most Fairey floatplanes and seaplanes built at Hayes in Middlesex were assembled and test flown at Hamble. In 1921, the Australian government ordered 6 Fairey 3D Mark I twin floatplanes to equip No. 5 Squadron to be based in Sydney for fleet cooperation work, and the Dutch government also ordered the seaplane. With the end of World War II and shrinking order books, Fairey's work changed to boat building, and today there are a variety of different boat building yards now located at Hamble Point. During the First World War, the first railway line was constructed into Hamble to the Admiralty No. 1 Southern Marine Acceptance Depot, intended to receive flying boats. A siding was laid to assist to the construction of A.V. Rowe's aircraft factory. Yet the war ended before the acceptance depot received a single airplane and was abandoned early in 1919 and purchased by Shell-Mex in 1923. However, in 1916, A.V. Rowe also purchased land which became known as the South Airfield, bounded to the north by Hamble Lane and south by Southampton Water, where the factory building had a distinctive square tower with a model airship on top, which was used as a windsock. In 1912, the company built the world's first totally enclosed monoplane, but it was the well-proportioned wooden biplane, the Avro 504, that kept the firm busy throughout the First World War and beyond. Production totalled 8,340 at several factories for almost 20 years. When the main production was moved to Manchester, Hamble became an experimental aircraft department, with the South Airfield unsuitable for some aircraft. In 1926, land was purchased to the north of Verdon Avenue, extending to the Portsmouth-Southampton railway line, which became known as the North Airfield. Air Service Training AST operated Hamble's North Airfield to train civil and military pilots from all over the world, known as Britain's Air University, and the old Avro slipway was used to train pilots for Imperial Airways flying boats.
Transatlantic flying services are on the way. In the spring of next year, Imperial Airways hope to make experimental flights across the Atlantic to America, and so their most experienced pilots are undergoing a special course at Hamble. Not a course of flying, because these men are already veterans of the Empire Air routes, but a course in sea navigation and maneuvering aircraft in water. The flights will be made in the new giant flying boats, but here they are practicing in the famous Calcutta flying boat type, which has been specially withdrawn from service for the purpose.
However, towards the end of 1933, all flying ceased from the South Airfield. During the Second World War, Spitfires were repaired at the factory, while several other types, including Hamdens, Lancasters, Flying Fortresses, Mitchells, Mustangs, and Mosquitoes, were modified. Hamble's North Airfield took on a new role as a delivery hub for aircraft fresh from the production line. Thousands of Spitfires found their way to frontline service through the efforts of the mainly female pilots of No. 15 Ferry Pool, delivering these and numerous other types of aircraft to operational stations from July 1941. In 1934, Armstrong Whitworth took over the Avro works at Hamble South, and 2 large extensions to the factory were built for the production of a new airliner, the Armstrong Whitworth Ensign, a 4-engined aircraft with a wingspan of 123 feet, which was intended to replace the Imperial flying boats. And until 1950, aircraft were either taxied or towed from the factory on the south airfield, crossing Hamble Lane by the present Chalmets BP entrance and following the course of the old railway line to the north airfield. In the early 1950s, more workshops and stores were added behind the original factory, whilst a new tool room and machine shop were added to the front for the production and assembly of Meteor and later Javelin jet aircraft. The Armstrong-Whitworth site at Hamble went on to be known as Hawker Siddeley Aviation and part of BAE Systems in 1999. In February 1936, the British Marine Aircraft Limited was formed to produce flying boats under licence and bought Sydney Lodge at Hamble, a late 18th century mansion, together with Hamble Cliff House, for access to Southampton Water. The company built a factory with a slipway to Southampton Water, but the deal came to naught and the company was sold to Henry Folland, formerly chief engineer for Gloucester Aircraft Company, who renamed the company Folland Aircraft. British Marine Aircraft Limited initially were involved in manufacturing aircraft components at Hamble, which included 35,000 major and sub-assemblies for a wide range of British military aircraft. Henry Folland left the company through ill health in 1951, and he handed control of the company to Teddy Petter, who immediately set about the design and production of the Folland Midge, followed by the Folland Gnat. Nearly 450 of the primary jet train was sold, mainly to India and Finland, although the Folland Gnat will always be synonymous with the RAF Red Arrows display team. In 1959, Folland, like Armstrong-Whitworth, was absorbed into the Hawker Siddeley Group, and both formed part of a new private independent company called Hamble Aerostructures Limited, registered at Kings Avenue with between 500 and 1,000 employees, specialising in defence activities and the repair and maintenance of aircraft and spacecraft. As well as Hamble Aerostructures, the area occupied by the original Avro factory, as well as Hamble South Airfield, is now a business park, and in February 1984, Hamble Airfield North was sent into receivership, and both aircraft and equipment were sold by auction, and it is now a mixture of playing fields, housing and industry and open spaces.